Hey there, welcome to Unit 1, Lesson 3 for American History 1. Today we're going to continue talking about exploration and kind of how, colonies were starting to be set up now. So our focus today is going to be on motivations for colonizing. So why was it that different countries were coming over to North America, to the New World, to um, stay here and decide to colonize the area? What was their purpose? And then we're going to look at what their relationship was with the natives as well. And then you've got an assignment to complete for today, and that'll be it. So today's agenda, excuse me, we're going to go through these notes, and then I'm going to talk to you about your encomienda system. Every time I try and say that, it does not want to come out of my mouth correctly. It's such an annoying word. So today for your notes, you do have an interactive notebook page that needs to be filled out. Keep in mind, this is required. You only have the option of doing the study questions, like the review questions that would come after it, but this part right here is required. So we're going to focus in on 3 different countries today. A lot of what we're going to focus on in the future is going to be the English, because the English are going to obviously have the most influence with the 13 colonies being created as we move towards becoming the United States. But we do want to spend a little bit of time talking about the French and the Spanish as well, because it wasn't just the English that were doing it. So today and tomorrow, we're going to actually be looking into kind of like what the Spanish specifically did, because a lot of people are just unaware of some of the actions that they took and how much power they really had at the beginning with this. So we're going to fill this in today. For each of these different countries, we're going to look at what their original intent was. So why did they come to colonize? What the reality was. So once they landed, were they able to achieve what their original intent was? And then what was their relationship with the natives like? So as I talk to you about this today, we're going to continue to look at this map right here. So any area that's green is just unexplored. Nobody's really kind of like staked claim to having it yet. Any yellow area here is going to be controlled by the Spanish. The blue is controlled by the French, and then the red is controlled by the British. So you're obviously still going to see some influence of this. If you are in this area of Canada today, then there's still a lot of people speaking French. There's like a French Canadian area, right? And that's because of when the French landed and influenced there. The same thing down with the French influence that we see in New Orleans, because they owned and colonized New Orleans to begin with. There's also a lot of Spanish influence in New Orleans that a lot of people don't know about. If you think about the languages that people speak, yes, in these areas that are now part of the United States, they're speaking mostly English, but the Spanish influence is why in Mexico and Central America and all, like a lot of the South American countries, people are speaking Spanish because the Spanish did have so much influence during this time. And then obviously, like I said, we're going to touch on Britain as well. So the first group that we're going to talk about are the French, and the French kind of get what I consider to be the gold star out of the 3. They really, in terms of having a relationship with the natives, are the best at it, and treat the Native Americans the best. So their original intent, though, was to come over and play a part in the fur trade, because you can use furs to be able to make clothing, things like that. So they didn't come originally to set up permanent settlements. They were coming just for the hunting season and then going back. So they weren't planning in the beginning of really staking their foot down and trying to claim a whole bunch of like power by saying, we're going to take all this land. The reality is that they are very successful at this. They find a lot of fur. Their trading is very successful. They make a lot of money. They do a lot of trading with Native Americans, which helps them to build a relationship with the Native Americans. So out of all 3 of these countries that we're talking about today, the French by far has the best relationship with the Native Americans out of any of them. The next one that we're going to look at are the Spaniards. And the Spaniards, when they show up, their goal is money, 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 money. They want to find as much gold as they can. They think that there's all of this like ancient treasure that's around for them to be able to just find and take. They also want to have the goal of trying to convert the natives into Christians. And then they also take the most land without really, asking anybody if they can have it. They just show up and they're like, hey, we're here, we're going to take it over. So they're not really necessarily the nicest people. And we're going to be learning more about that today and tomorrow. The reality is, though, that they don't actually find a whole lot of gold. They think they're going to basically swim in riches, and they don't. Don't get me wrong. There's going to be some gold and stuff out there, but most of them are not going to find it. Most of the Spanish conquistadors that are going out and on these conquests are not super successful. When they do have relations with the natives, a lot of the Native Americans resist conversion. They don't want to switch their religion and follow Jesus and God and stuff like that. And as a result of that resistance, a lot of them are going to die because a lot of them are going to get killed. They're not going to be treated very well by the Spanish, but they do have success at getting the most territory. So as you can see here, they really have the biggest amount of land to claim at this time. Obviously, that's not going to continue to be the case. The third group that we want to talk about, oh, sorry, I forgot to mention the relationship with the natives. It is by far the worst. We're going to talk more about that tomorrow. They are trying, because of them, trying to force them to convert to Christianity. That doesn't help. They enslave a lot of the Native Americans. A lot of people don't realize that it wasn't just Africans, like we talked about last week, that were enslaved. So a lot of natives were as well. And then they also would purposefully kill a lot of Native Americans with disease, knowing that they didn't have their immune systems to fight off certain diseases. And they would literally get lots of them sick on purpose. So treatment by the Spanish with the Native Americans was by far the worst. And then lastly, we're going to talk about the British, who are really kind of the last to the party. They're going to have the biggest influence. Oops, let me move out of the way. They're going to have the biggest influence. Their goal originally is to try and become more powerful than Spain. So end up getting more land than Spain. They really wanted to use the colonies that they were going to create as a place that they could send prisoners. And they wanted to have land to be able to grow crops so that they could use those items to be able to sell them and make money. So that was their original intent. So let's talk about the reality. They succeed eventually in getting more land than Spain. Obviously, eventually, the British are going to end up having a lot more influence, hence the reason why we are speaking English today, right? They do send places to send their prisoners. So the colony of Georgia, for example, was a colony that in the beginning was a place where they sent a whole bunch of prisoners. But it does take them a very long time for them to find land that's good to be able to farm on and be very successful with. Their relationship with the natives was semi-decent. At first, it was pretty good. You've heard the stories of like Thanksgiving and like everything like that, but over time, the British would continue to disregard the natives and take more and more of their land away, and that relationship would start to deteriorate. So they just are kind of doing okay with the natives. So this brings us to today's assignment, and I'll pull it up on the thing in just a second. You're going to be learning about a system that the Spanish put in place called the encomienda system. And this was basically their way of trying to, like I said, force that Christianity part and convert these Native Americans to Christianity, and kind of how their structure was set up for how you're supposed to live within society. And we'll hit on more of this tomorrow, but you can see here, like there was almost this like pyramid scheme of like people at the bottom were people that were slaves. And then your Native Americans that weren't slaves themselves would be above that. Then you have your mestizos and your Creoles and your peninsulars. And so these are all going to be different groups of people that are going to have different levels of power, kind of like a caste system. So that's what you're going to be reading about today. So let me exit out of the presentation here and come to your assignment. So here we are on Unit 1, Lesson 3. It says, today students will be able to analyze the reasons that European nations wanted to expand to North America. So we just talked about those reasons, and we're doing that in order to understand more the formation of American identity and how we get to become these colonies that eventually turn into the United States. So the notes that I just went over are linked here if you need to pull those up to be able to use it to fill in your interactive notebook. And then the assignment that you're going to complete is here. Remember, when you're done watching this video and you are done completing this assignment, that if you're watching the video because you were absent from class, that you go down here and you complete that lesson demonstrated form so that you can make sure that you get your absence turned over to a present. But if you don't do the assignment, I'm not switching that over. So what you're going to do for this assignment, let me put this in preview mode so it'll look like it would look for you. You have a reading right here to click on. So you're going to use this reading and then the information from that chart that I was talking about, and you're going to answer these questions. So that's it. Like you've got, what, 7 questions that you need to answer based on the reading. And once you turn that in, you're done. If you've got other assignments that you're missing, work on those. If not, then you're good. And let me know if you need anything. You know that I'm here to answer any questions you might have. And I will see you for the next lesson. Bye, guys.